This is Next Steps for Seniors with your host, Wendy Jones. Each week, Wendy brings resources and information to help guide you through those next steps with elderly parents and loved ones. If you have questions or topic suggestions, you can call us at 248-651-5010.
Hello and welcome to Next Steps for Seniors, Conversations on Aging. I am so blessed to be here with you today. As you all know, we love having conversations that nobody else likes to have, right? Because everybody gets older. We all age. It happens to everyone. How we go through it, however, is a little different, right? And my goal is to give as much knowledge and information and resources to our listeners that they can embrace this time of aging and not be fearful. And that is our goal today. So our guest in the studio today is Victoria Volk. She is the owner of The Unleashed Heart and is an advanced certified grief recovery specialist and really offers a holistic approach to those who want to go from surviving to thriving. Our topic today is going to be the six myths, say that really fast, of grief. And Victoria, thank you for being with us today. We are so blessed to have you in the studio, and I'm very grateful for your knowledge. Everybody has gone through some kind of grief in their lives. Many are maybe grieving right now, and that's why I'm grateful for you and for your time with us today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about these myths, because there are a lot of myths when it comes to grieving.
There are 6, and it's typically what all of us as society have been brought up to learn, not intentionally, not in malice, right, by our parents. We always resort to what we know. And we're not taught how to respond to grief. We're not taught how to work through and process grief as children. There's no manual for it either, really. I mean, this is not taught in school either. Just like life skills aren't taught in schools.
Right, exactly.
It's like by the time we reach adulthood, we've already put so many rocks in our backpacks, each rock representing a loss of some kind, pet loss, moving, maybe parents divorced, grandparent dying. Maybe you had to move as a child, so you lost all your friends and you had to create new friends. So many reasons why we experience grief, but that has nothing to do with death of someone. And so we keep adding these rocks to our backpack. And so by the time we reach midlife and we start losing people in our lives because we're taught how to acquire things and people, but not what to do when we lose them, it tends to bring up all these other losses and the weight that you've been carrying all these years. And so as children, though, one of the first losses that many children experience is either the loss of a pet or the loss of a grandparent. And the adult parents, caregivers, caretakers resort to what they know in teaching that child how to respond to that loss, which probably is unhelpful, maybe even hurtful, because often when a child loses a pet or a grandparent, they'll say, I'll say a pet because that kind of leads into a couple of the myths. So let's say, Wendy, you lost your pet when you were 5 and your parent was like, that's okay, Wendy. Don't feel bad. That's myth number 1. Don't feel bad. We can get a new dog tomorrow. We'll go to the pet store. We'll get a new dog tomorrow. We'll replace the loss. That's myth number 2.
Wow. For sure that happens every day. There's no doubt in my mind.
Now, for something with a relationship like a grandparent, where let's say your child lost their grandparent, and for you, it's painful, right? You lost your parent. Let's say it was your father. You lost your father. And the child was very close to his grandfather, but you haven't learned how to respond to your grief, right? So you'll resort to what you know. So the child then, when he sees that you're upset, when you're thinking about losing your father, the child internalizes that, well, I'm not going to talk about my grandpa because it'll make my mom sad. To the opposite of that, when the child may bring it up, the parent may say, or maybe you would say, I don't want to talk about that. It makes mommy sad. So then what does the child then do?
Suppress it.
Grieves alone. And that's myth number 3. So these are the 3 myths that so many of us are taught as children. And then also, if you are a young, let's say a teenage boy, or even 10, 11, 12, and your father passes away, so many young boys are told, you got to be strong for your mom.
Oh, goodness, yes.
That's myth number 4.
Yeah. And it's no ill intention. People aren't like, I'm going to turn this around. Like, they just don't know.
Don't know.
And when you think about losing somebody really close to you, I mean, let's go back to the pet just for a second.
Mhm.
And I think most parents have probably done this, but I remember a fish died when we were on vacation and somebody was watching it. And so they went out and they just bought a new fish and they put it in the same tank and we went and picked it up. And I specifically remember my daughter going, this doesn't look like my fish. So we try to make things better. We just want to make it better so people don't have hurt.
We intellectualize it and we try to fix it with our minds. And that's what we're all taught what to do with grief, is to intellectualize it. Let's just think ourselves through this instead of feel ourselves through this. So then by the time we reach adulthood, we've learned those first 4, right? So then when a big loss happens in our life, people might say, well, you just got to keep busy. Just distract yourself.
Distractions.
Or that's what you do. You resort to just
food.
Yes.
Right. Food, alcohol. And that's not what we want to do for sure.
Yes.
And
we call those short-term energy relieving behaviors, or STIRBs for short.
So I'm assuming we're going to get into in the next segment how to resolve all these myths, but I'll let you keep going because I know there's 6 and we're only at 4.
Yeah. The 5th one was keep busy.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what so many of us do, is we resort then to these things that help us to feel better for a short period of time. And that can involve relationships, shopping, gambling. Just keep busy. Or actually being of service. It's good to be of service to others, correct? Right? We all agree that's a good thing. If the motivation is an effort to get your mind and distract yourself off of your own feelings and what's happening within you, then that's a STIRB. So that's the differentiator of, is this healthy? Is this helpful for me? Or am I like overcompensating outwardly because I'm feeling so much hurt inside myself? Because it's really difficult to think about ourselves when we're helping others, right?
So difficult. Right. Exactly.
Right. And so that can become a STIRB that we resort to feel better. And then last but not least, we've all heard time heals
all wounds.
All wounds.
Everybody says it.
Everybody says it. And after 30 plus years of myself being a griever, losing my dad at a very young age, my grandmother the year before, I should have been over it by now. Heard that so many times.
I can only imagine.
It's not helpful. And it can be hurtful, actually.
Right. And how about the people that have lost multiple people within the same year? And I don't want to say the word, but we all know what happened during COVID. It was horrific. And you were losing, siblings, you were losing parents. It was outrageous. And it was with a short order, right? A short period of time. I can't even imagine how that weighs in on somebody's life. So the 6 myths are so true.
Yeah. So just to recap them, all, don't feel bad or don't feel sad. Replace the loss. Grieve alone. Be strong. Keep busy. And time heals all wounds. Or it just takes time. Just give it time.
Yeah,
it's the action that you take in time that matters, not time itself.
Well, and people assume, like if you lose someone on a specific date, that same date, the rest of your life, it doesn't matter if it's a year later or 20 years later, you will never forget that day.
For so many years, actually, it wasn't until maybe 2 years ago, 3, I don't know, something like that, within the last 5 years for sure, I only remembered or had the date in my mind was the day my dad died, not his birthday, because I was 8. when he passed, right? So I didn't have a
That's
lot of
so
birthdays with him.
Right.
It was
It's
his
so
death
young
date.
that you're holding on to. And that in and of itself for a young girl is not healthy. So we are going to get into in our next segment on those 6 myths, how to transform those and what we can be doing. You're listening to Next Steps for Seniors, Conversations on Aging. We'll be back with you in just a moment. Welcome back to Next Steps for Seniors, Conversations on Aging. Each and every week on Tuesdays, we drop an episode on podcast talking about the physical next steps. This is so important as we talk about these, especially when it comes to grief, because everybody at some point or another has grief in their lives. And on Fridays, we drop a spiritual and emotional component and how God can step into those situations and bring healing and restoration. So today our topic, the 6 myths of grieving. So I'd love to start, Victoria, this segment with, how do people understand that they're grieving? Because there's different identifiers, right, of grieving, and they probably don't even realize they are even grieving.
Yeah, and I think the best way I can start that is by giving the definition of grief, which grief is the loss of hopes, dreams, and expectations. It's anything that you wish would have been or could be different, better, or more. And that can be with relationships with those living. Often it is in the relationships with those living in our lives,
Right.
or with our health, or with our relationship with money, all sorts of things, right? There's intangible losses that we experience, loss of safety and security. It's so much more than just about death, which is why people always think it's just about death. And so unless they've had a loss to them that feels really significant or emotionally painful, they don't identify themselves as a griever. But we are all grievers, and we all grieve at 100%. We just don't connect the dots that what's happening in our lives, the patterns that repeat, the physical ailments we may be experiencing or feeling, or the angry outbursts. We just don't see it as grief.
So once we recognize it, okay, what is the next steps?
Awareness is the number one thing, right? To be aware that grief is my issue. That's how it happened for me. Like, whoa, I had another loss, opened up a whole can of worms. I'm like, whoa, this grief is my issue here. And so I personally went to Google, like, what is there out there for me? Because I had tried therapy in the past, hypnotherapy, and that helped me get out of a really toxic relationship, but it didn't address my grief. I'd been also molested as a child, so I had like this trauma on top of losing people in my life. So there was so much of that I had to process through to even get to the awareness that grief was the issue, right? Because trauma is what happens and grief is always what's left, right? And so I discovered the grief recovery method, and it changed my life. It transformed my life. I went to Austin, Texas to train. The person I was before I went down there was not the same person that came home.
Right.
So much anger and resentment that came out of that experience.
So talk to us what that process is like, because you're a facilitator now, correct?
Yes. Yeah. I'm a trained facilitator. I can do this work online or in person. And it's an evidence-based and action-based program that's been around for more than 40 years. The founder was a Vietnam veteran who lost his son, infant son, and his marriage fell apart, and he was going to take his own life. And he asked the question, he went to the beach, was going to take his own life, and he said, what do I wish would have been there for me? And that one question stopped him. And it sent him on this path of talking with other men, talking about grief, really examining his own life and how that led to where he was at. And that's how the grief recovery method was born. And then the grief recovery handbook, and then the Grief Recovery Institute, and now it's being implemented by military installations where chaplains are being trained, and psychotherapists and psychiatrists are coming to this training because their training doesn't cover grief, right? So it's very impactful. Kent University did a study on it. That's why it's evidence-based.
Right. So I just want to share with our listeners, I know many churches have what we call Grief Share. And it's an opportunity that you go to a church, if you're not already a member of a church, and you say, I want to be involved in this grief share. It's a 12-week class. They meet every week. And people in that class have all lost somebody, whether it's a parent, a sibling, a child, and everybody's at a different stage, like you mentioned, of grief. So grief share is also an incredible way, and it's hard to admit it, like you said. Number one is admitting that you're grieving. Number two is doing something about it. Right? And understanding the myths you just shared with us.
Well, another piece of the misinformation about grief is that there are stages to grief. And that's all over in pop culture. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's work was about people struggling or dying from terminal illness, not grief directly. So it was these phases or stages that someone who was dying of a terminal illness were going through. That ended up being translated and tied to grief specifically. But that's not what our work was about. Ken Ross, her son, was even on my podcast, Grieving Voices, where we talked about that. But it's so prevalent, and that's what people think, that there's these linear stages that a griever goes through, and that's not completely accurate.
Right. So what would you say, like the number one grieving thing that you talked about was, and I had my notes right here, don't feel sad. So what would you tell our listeners? How should they feel? When people say you don't feel sad, you're like, oh, but I am sad. I'm going to take a moment for myself. You want to encourage people to feel, right?
Yeah, we don't tell the emotional truth about ourselves. We so often will say, when someone says, how are you? You say, I'm fine. Well, what's fine? Fine is feelings inside not expressed. We just don't want to get into it with people. We don't want to, do you want to know the emotional truth of how I feel? Because people just don't know how to hold us in that space. And coming back to grief share, I don't personally have a personal experience with it, so I can't speak to the specifics. But how grief recovery method is different is that every week we're taking a different action and we're examining a different piece of our grief. It's not come to the meeting and share the stories, which often can leave some people feeling worse because they've heard everybody else's stories, and so it can feel heavy for them.
Yeah, but it's a focus on God, so it's it's kind of different.
Yeah, it's different. It's different, right?
Yeah, right.
So this is just a self-examination tool and framework. Right.
So you encourage people to feel, and maybe a question when someone says, move on type of that whole process, that first one, you can say, well, do you really want to know how I feel? Like when people say, don't feel sad, or well, okay, but I am sad. Do you want, because when you say you just try to suppress it, I'm fine. It's fine. People don't want to talk about it because they don't want to go deep and they don't want to be, vulnerable or transparent. And a lot of times when you're in that moment and you actually do need someone to talk to, maybe you say, just to be transparent, I'm actually not good. Yeah. I'm actually hurting inside. I am so sad. I have a huge void. I don't know what to do. Maybe you actually articulate your pain, right? And your hurt versus I'm fine and moving on, because we're suppressing it. We're pretending like we're fine and we're really not fine.
Yes, but we go into people pleasing because we know that the other person is probably going to feel uncomfortable with how we truly feel, right? Because we are not taught how to respond and what to do about grief. And so that's when I just mention that I'm a grief coach or what have you, people shut down. Like they're afraid.
It's about it. Oh, nobody wants to talk about grief. Absolutely. But everybody goes through it. That's the part. And that's why you're here today. We have to talk about the things that nobody wants to talk about, because how are you going to get through these times in your life? It is very, very difficult. So my first thing, and we've got 2 minutes left in the program, is to lean on God. God is our answer. God can fill that void. He is the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end. He can do absolutely anything. Now, of course, we want to see that person in heaven. So that's the other huge component is, where are they going after they pass? But when it comes to that, that's believing. That's Romans 10, 9, 8, and 9, I think 9 and 10. But it's all about believing in God, knowing that He's there for you, and knowing that you're going to spend eternity in heaven. And you will see that person again. And to me, that's like the most important thing, because we can grieve, but we don't grieve with the sting of death. We grieve with the sting of hope, because there is hope on the other side that we're going to see that person again in heaven. So I just want to encourage you, and I want to ask Victoria, because there's something more that you're working on in this last minute I wanted you to share with our listeners as well.
Yeah, I'll be launching soon a resource for people that don't know what to do or what to say when they want to support a friend or loved one who is going through grief or a difficult time. There's going to be a resource coming out for that. And then also a resource specifically for grievers to give them some quick wins, jam-packed full of resources, and I'll have some audios in there as well. So those will be coming out soon. But I have a lot of free resources on my website, theunleashedheart.com, free ebooks. I have a
Wait, can you say your website again? I'm sorry, that was fast.
Sorry, theunleashedheart.com. Theunleashedheart.com.
Okay, there we go. You're listening to Next Steps for Seniors, Conversations on Aging. Check out our website, theunleashedheart.com. Thank you for tuning in to Next Steps for Seniors. Our podcast drops twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 a.m. Find us on your favorite podcast platform and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. To learn more about Next Steps for Seniors, visit us at nextsteps4seniors.com.